What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are here for, of course, the UFC Vegas 30 preview. Of course, it's just got underway now. The Cage Warriors has just finished and got run of a little mix-up, so I thought I'd wait and see what happened at Cage Warriors 125 before going live to preview UFC Vegas 30, of course. Now we go from one European matchup, which was absolutely phenomenal, between Garry and Jack Grant, to another in the UFC between Ciryl Gane and Alexander Volkov. Of course, these two heavyweights from Russia and France are going to come and give us what I hope is a fight of the year contender. Both of these two guys are absolutely phenomenal talents in the heavyweight division. Both top 5, top 6 competitors. And, if they bring their A game, we're in for an absolute cracker. Obviously, Ciryl Gane 8-0. His last performance was against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Maybe not the best performance. No thought on his part. That just was one of those fights where Rozenstruik was coming off the knockout loss. Was a bit apprehensive, you could say. And Ciryl Gane didn't have the right dance partner on the night to show us what he's capable of, but nonetheless he went the 5 rounds, got the unanimous decision win, of course, and kept his undefeated record. Now, of course, he got that impressive win over Junior Dos Santos, got impressive wins against Don Tale Mayes, Rafael Pessoa, of course. So he's coming through this ranks very quickly, and of course this heavyweight division is not talent rich, and it's not very stacked. You can climb the top 15 with 3 very good notable wins, and that's what Ciryl Gane's done. Of course, you saw Rozenstruik do the same. He had 2 fights, I think, maybe 3, getting into the top 15, top 8. Then he called out Francis Ngannou, who lost that fight, and then since then there's been in and around the top 5, top 6. So it's one of those ones where you look at this division, you go, maybe it's into 2 or 3 different compartments. I would say 3. You got Ngannou, Stipe, and probably John Jones. You enter into that mix at the top of the division, although John Jones yet to make his debut heavyweight, so it's an unknown factor just where he lies in this heavyweight division. But what he's done so far, his resume, his GOAT status puts him in there. You have to put him in the top bracket and anticipate he's going to be at the very top of the heavyweight division, along with Stipe and Francis Ngannou. Then, in my opinion, you got Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, probably Rozenstruik you put in there as well. You got those. You put Ciryl Gane in there. I think he's going to enter that top array of talent in the heavyweight division, but I think he's still building his way up there. We can't throw him in there too quickly against the likes of Ngannou and Stipe and etc. because he's still very young, still very green. Volkov, on the hand, is very experienced, and I say, he's in that ballpark as well. He's in that second or third, and then you got the Tanner Bosers, the Christokauses, the Augusto Sakai's in the third compartment of that heavyweight division. And obviously there's up and comers like Tom Aspinall. You got some good rich and upcomers, but there's some that come towards the end of their career and some that are still coming into their prime. There's no one right now, maybe other than Francis Ngannou, who's richly in his prime at the moment, you could say. But even then, you can see the limits he's making fight in, fight out. But again, he's still someone who's quite green and still learning on the job. You could say you saw the difference between him in the first Stipe fight to the second Stipe fight. He's made a lot of progression, and he's still got a couple, 2, 3, 4 years at the top of his game. Whereas Stipe, with all due respect, is coming towards the end of Curtis Blades is 34, 35, I believe. Derek Lewis is up that end of the 30s as well. Curtis Blades is a bit younger than that. I do apologise. He's early 30s, isn't he? But nonetheless, this division is stacked, and to take a look at the rankings, of course. You have got Ciryl Gane in 3, Alexander Volkov in 5. Obviously, Volkov beat Alistair Overeem in his past performances. Obviously, Alistair Overeem at that point was then cut from the organisation, or didn't have his contract renewed. But either way, it was Alistair Overeem's last night in the UFC, and it was a fantastic finish there for Volkov, of course, in the second round with the cross-hook combo. And obviously, before that, he beat Walt Harris with a kick to the solar plex back in October. So he's on a 2-fight win streak. Before that, he lost to Curtis Blades. No qualms in Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades is a top competitor. Obviously, he fights Rozenstruik next as well, and that's going to be an interesting bout, of course, to see what happens, because obviously Curtis Blades and Ngannou have both lost to Francis Ngannou. Curtis Blades twice. Rozenstruik probably has a half. If he gets that win, he can say he lost by on a fluke with that knockout, that first round knockout back at UFC 2. I believe it was back in Jacksonville, of course. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Obviously, Derek Lewis right now is rumoured to be the main contender for Francis Ngannou. Obviously, they thought back in 2018 after that Stipe fight again. similar to how Rosenstruck played it with Ciryl Gane. I think Ngannou, look back on that, say that was an anomaly, a man lacking confidence, and realizing that he might not be at the top of his game right now, and taking it a little bit safer, and obviously lost that decision to Gary Lewis. So it'll be interesting to see how that rematch takes place. Obviously, Ngannou is absolutely smashing it right now. His confidence is as high as ever. But Derek Lewis will go in there knowing that he can beat him. Both are very powerful. Obviously, Derek Lewis absolutely murdered Curtis Blades in their fight back in February. So it's an interesting one to see where the featherweight division's at. But tonight, if Ciryl Gane wins, you've got to start putting him in title contention. Even though it might be 2-3 fights soon, looking at his record, of course. Obviously, for Volkov, he's had 41 professional fights. It's 5 times as many professional bouts as Gane has had coming into this one. So you're probably looking at him as an experienced favourite. But again, Ciryl Gane is doing his work, he's doing his business. He's a huge heavyweight, but it's not often he's going to be stepping into the cage to someone who's a lot bigger than him, 20 pounds heavier than him, than Gane. Alexander Volkov weighed in using the maximum of that heavyweight limit, of course, at 265. That's why I do think we need another division, maybe at 235, 230. I think we need another division. The fact that someone can weigh in at 235 and fight someone at 265, in my opinion, is quite ludicrous. Especially when you look at, you wouldn't see, Max Holloway go up and face Israel Adesanya, you could say, or Kamaru Usman weigh in the same that they do. That wouldn't be a sanctioned belt. But for some reason, we sanction it and allow it in the heavier brackets of a heavyweight. But I do think we need a cruiserweight bracket in between light heavy and heavyweight, somewhere in between 230 and 240. You saw that little stint between DC and Stipe where the heavyweight champion was around 230, 240. Obviously, Ngannou's now going to take that up to 255, 260, you could say. So I think we do need to split it open into two divisions, and maybe we won't see such a stagnant heavyweight division, or at least the heavyweight division will be maybe once, twice a year, whereas you've got the cruiserweight going 2-3 times a year. These smaller guys fighting at their optimal weight classes. But tonight, I'm frothing at the mouth for this one. I think this one, 2 phenomenal strikers, 2 phenomenal boxers, 2 knockout artists as well. I don't know how this goes the first 5 rounds unless both of them decide they obviously respect between the power and the strength of each competitor, unless that gets a little bit too much and we see a little bit of a standoff from each competitor, not looking to throw with ill intent, you could say. We might see a 5-rounder, but I don't see how one of these aren't getting finished tonight. And to take a look at the tail table, 8-0 against 33-8, absolutely mesmerising differences in the record, but of course, undefeated Gane, there's no man. And it's going to be 7 tonight. 6 loss versus 6-7, absolutely huge from Alexander Volkov there. 3-inch height advantage. He loses in the reach advantage. So Ciryl Gane actually got 81-inch reach there to an 80-inch of Volkov, but it's really in the legs that we see Volkov take over there. 47.5-inch reach for Volkov compared to 42 for Ciryl Gane, and that's going to be where maybe the fight's won. Obviously, Volkov has those high kicks, those body kicks, those punches. He's able to mix it up quite nicely with the ground game as well. He can clinch very nicely. It's going to be interesting to see how the smaller guy comes up against the bigger guy. Obviously, we saw it in not such a larger capacity, but between DC and Stipe, obviously DC coming in using the clinch work on that's phenomenally well. And you can see the same between Ciryl Gane and Volkov tonight. Equally, you can see Ciryl Gane looking to land the overhand, coming in very flush. He's going to be a faster guy, being the smaller guy, of course. You can see him landing an overhand right, rushing in, you could see. But you could also see Volkov countering very nicely, using the kicks very nicely, and putting on a showpiece. And this fight has a heavyweight title feeling to it without it actually having a title on the line, which is probably the biggest crime here, that there's no title on the line. It is a 5-round main event on a fight night and not a sold out pay-per-view event, you could say, because it deserves to be on that level. And I'm actually pumped for this one. 2 Europeans going at it at the top of their game, and it's a really tough one to predict. So obviously, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Give us your predictions, of course. Ciryl Gane or Alexander Volkov. Could the winner, where would the winner be in terms of the title talk? Would you expect him to be the next in line, or would you expect him to fight Curtis Blades or Rosenstruck? Obviously, Gane, Rosenstruck, 2 you could book. knowing that both of them are full confidence, but having just seen that recently, they're still very much clear in the mind of fans. So you couldn't put that one right away. Garden versus Blades would be a great fight. Volkov that was already beaten Blades. Volkov versus Roadstrick could be a great outcome. So there is some matchups to be made, but again, there's a lot of the same matchups. A lot of people find and trying to stay not relevant, but trying to stay competing regularly. While we see what happens at the top of the division between the heavyweight champions, of course, the heavyweight champion and his contenders between John Jones, Stipe, and Derek Lewis. Because Stipe could come back and say he wants that trilogy and rightfully be deserving of the trilogy bout. Of course, he took him 5 rounds once, and absolutely dominated the fight. He's what consensus greatest heavyweight of all time. Stipe Miocic's got the most offenses in the heavyweight division of all time in the UFC. But he probably deserves a trilogy bout, and obviously John Jones is there. And when John Jones says he's ready, we have to make John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. It's just a fight that has to be made immediately, when it's available. So we're probably going to see Derek Lewis versus Francis. That's going to happen in probably September by the looks of things. And what happens if Derek Lewis beats Francis Ngannou? He's going to be 2-0 against Ngannou. Derek Lewis, heavyweight champion. He played Derek Lewis. There's a quite a bit of a mess at the top of the division. It's filtering down, stopping these guys progressing to their maximum, you could say. But of course, I do think Gane's going to get it done. I think he's going to be too powerful. I see an overhand right or an uppercut land, and we can see a knockout finish with Gane. But I could equally see Volkov putting on a kickboxing masterpiece for us and taking the wind out of Ciryl Gane early on in the first 2 rounds, and then getting that finish in the 3rd or 4th round. A really, really mouth-watering contest between the two. Of course, in the co-main event, we have got Tanner Boser versus OSP. Tanner Boser taking this on short notice. Of course, OSP taking this on short notice as well. He was supposed to be fighting down light heavyweight in tonight, in fact, but his fight pulled out. Max Christian pulled out with an injury. Tanner Boser steps in. That means OSP is now fighting at heavyweight. Of course, these two are in that ballpark of 230, 240, where they probably should be fighting in their own cruiserweight division, you could say. OSP is a little bit big for light heavyweight. He's probably he's just right for light heavyweight. You wouldn't see him down at 185 ever. He's good at 205, and you could probably see him at 230, 240. Goes and faces the fighters. He's going to have a real problem due to the size differential. Boser is a good competitor. He's a game competitor as well. He always comes to fight. He's on a 2-fight loss at the moment. Lost Skid, of course, between Arlof Skin and Alila Teeth. There's split decision. Many people thought Tanner Boser won that fight, although so it's an underwatch one on the record, of course. So he's going to want to bounce back tonight against OSP. The interesting point, and I saw this with MMA Junkie, of course, the quarantining rules in Canada meant that he had to quarantine inside the hotel and then into his house. And he, the day he flew to America was the day out quarantining. So it's interesting to see where he was at. Obviously, he's just come from a fight camp, so his fitness is up there, and he's a heavyweight. It's not like he has to cut a tremendous amount of weight. So it's going to be interesting to see if Bulldozer can bounce back against OSP, and what OSP can do. He lost to Jamal Hill back in last year in December. He beat Alonzo Minifield, so he's really on that win-loss point. You never see a tough run of form from OSP, and I do see the same happening tonight. I think Tanner Boser gets it done. That's what I put on my UFC picks, at least, and I think it's going to be a good scrap. It probably goes to 3 rounds, but if it doesn't go to 3 rounds, I think Tanner Boser probably gets it finished. But OSP has got the Sutherland Prue choke, as it's now known, prior to the Von Blue choke, of course. And you could see a submission win be pulled out of nowhere from OSP, of course. Of course, in the main card as well, you got Ioni Barcelos, a fantastic, exciting bantamweight who's had a rough time with fight cancellation recently, 3 on the bounce. His last fight was against Khalid Taha after what was 11 months outside the cage. Came back, was absolutely phenomenal in that fight, and we're looking to face him up against the top 10, the Dominic Cruz's, the Rafael Sancho, who he was supposed to fight back in February, but that fight got cancelled. Those caliber of opponents we're looking at now. But he's got a good opponent in Timo Valiev, 17-2 against 16-1. Experience-wise, they're very similar. Valiev, of course, coming to this on a huge win streak, 7-fight win streak at the moment, 8-fight win streak maybe. His last win up against Martin Day again back in February. He won via decision. He got Trevor Jones no contest before that, but he's been on an absolute tear up in that division, and it's interesting to see how these two play out. I do think Harry Onibus gets it done. He's, he is a very exciting bantamweight, and this division, I keep saying, is the best in mixed martial arts. They never fail to deliver whatever matchup we see at bantamweight, whatever organisation it seems to be on. The bantamweights deliver, and it's absolutely phenomenal. Before that, we've got Andre Fili versus Daniel Pineda. Obviously, Andre Fili, fantastic hands. Daniel Pineda, 2017, 27-14 on his record. So I think a few people are overlooking that. I think looking at his record, a lot of people on UFC picks, I think it was about 20-25% to pick Daniel Pineda to win tonight. Andre Fili, the heavy favourite going to this one. Obviously, Pineda, his last fight was that loss to Cub Swanson, that knockout loss, which was quite a devastating loss. If you remember, of course. But before that, he beat Herbert Burns. He had 2 back-to-back no contests, and before that, that's in PFL, of course. That's an interesting one with the points decision and the points system. How that works out, but that was back in 2019. But since then, 1 win and 1 loss. And I do think he loses again tonight to Andre Fili, with all due respect. And now we move on to our Europeans. Obviously, Nicholas Dalby against Tim Means. Tim Means an absolute legend of the sport, but Nicholas Dalby, former Cage Warriors champion, of course. He's going to be looking to compete tonight, and he's had up and down. He's been up and down recently. Coming off, actually, you say that he's on a 5-fight win streak. I thought he'd lost prior to that, but obviously he beat Alex Oliveira. The no contest I'm looking at here, but that was on Fight Island against Jesse Ronson. Daniel Rodriguez, he beat, of course, back in November, so he's absolutely tearing it up now. Obviously, you can remember that no contest against Ross Houston because the material, the canvas, the amount of blood that was shared between the two. It's absolutely phenomenal what the two are doing, and obviously he's in welterweight, and we've just seen a new welterweight champion crowned in Ian Garry. Of course, Ian Garry's just absolutely put on a phenomenal display against Jack Grant, a very game and gritty Jack Grant at Cage Rage 125 that we just witnessed. Of course, there was a lot of talk with Ian Garry coming into this bout, who would be in his corner, what was going on with his team, with Team KF, and no longer being affiliated with Ian Garry going to this one, And Paul Hughes was in the corner today. Paul Hughes, of course, yesterday just saw Joe McColgan become the lightweight champion against Ajay Sadari, and Paul Hughes put in a phenomenal display today in the corner. Someone, again, is someone very young in this game. He's very experienced and very calm and composed. There was times where you could see Ian Garry maybe not letting the event get towards him, but looking to put on a performance, looking to let the ego go out, the gamesmanship maybe go out just a little. He was having fun about from start to finish, but there's points where you're looking at maybe Jack Grant could get a submission here and there, but Ian Garry showed why he's called the future. He put on a dominant display, won 50-45, 50-44 on the scorecards, and is the now welterweight champion. It's going to be interesting to see what his next move is. Obviously, you'd expect him to take a little bit of time off, but he put the doubters to bed today and showed his coming of age performance. He's 7-0 now. It was a performance, he's got a great highlight reel. This one will go on his highlight reel, probably go on the top of his CV with it being a title fight. But it was one of those gritty performances, a professional performance, where he wasn't really tested. It kind of reminded me of Marvin Vettori and Israel Adesanya a couple of weeks ago, with Israel Adesanya, looking to take the head off, but not quite being able to do it and having to grind out that result. Whereas Marvin Vettori, a fantastic grappler, you could say the same about Jack Grant, who had a couple of points of looking to get positions here and there, looking for heel hooks and arm bars, etc. But Ian Garry just being too good, using his head movement. His footwork's absolutely phenomenal when you watch it, and we've just seen it go over 5 rounds. The first time that Ian Garry's gone 5 rounds, of course, and he put in a very dominant display. But it did remind me of looking at Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vettori to a very similar sort of procession of events in the fight as a whole. And Jack Grant, of course, that was his 3rd title fight. Another loss in the title fight, so it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back from that one. He took a lot of damage. The jab of Ian Garry was phenomenal. Groundwork of Ian Garry was phenomenal. He almost submitted Jack Grant himself. And the funniest moment was obviously the back and forth that those two were having in the octagon in the 5th round. I think Jack Grant saying, let's fight, and Ian Garry coming back and explaining, I've been fighting, having a little word with Mark Goddard, being talk about is this enough movement, etc., and just enjoying it. You can see these two, as we mentioned in the preview, they are friends, they respect each other. They have tremendous respect for each other, and that showed in the fight. It was 2 game opponents going after one another, but just that Ian Garry is the better man on the night, and probably probably as a whole, you probably see that result, get played out 6 times out of 10. You could say, and it's going to be interesting again to see what Ian Garry's next move is, whether it's in the 170-pound division defender's title. I would like to say yes, or a call up to maybe the UFC, maybe, especially with that card in London. If it does happen at UFC 2 London, Paddy Pimblett could probably making his debut there. You'd hope you could definitely see Ian Garry making a debut there, called upon. But I do want to see what happens with his team first, and seeing what happens around and behind the scenes, because he's a phenomenal talent inside the cage, and he's at that pivotal point in his career now where he needs to be making the right choices, the right decisions, and not letting the fame and the game of this social media, I guess, era not get too far ahead of them, where he's making a wrong decision that's costing him or poor performance, you could say. But yeah, today was a good performance, a fantastic performance in Garry, and he rightfully is now the welterweight champion. It could be interesting to mention before just what he does next. But to go back to, of course, Nicholas Dalby, I do think he gets the win over Tim Means, 19-3-1 against 31-12, and that leads us on nicely to Jay Herbert, of course, a former lightweight champion in Cage Warriors, coming back into the UFC tonight. Obviously, he lost on his debut. It was an unfortunate performance on his debut. It was looking fantastic in there. But if you remember, that's what started the chat between Dan Hardy and Herb Dean, that knockout, because obviously, I think, obviously Dan Hardy being hugely affiliated with UK MMA, Cage Warriors, etc., he saw Jay Herbert in trouble and wanted to be finished sooner than he did, and he let Herb Dean let Jay Herbert maybe take a little bit too much damage. But he returns tonight, looking for that first win in the UFC. He's up against a wily veteran, Renato Moicano, which probably says huge amount of credit to Jay Herbert and the talent level he is. The fact that he's up against Moicano, who's 14-4-1. He lost to Havai Fitzayev back in December, but he's got wins over Calvin Cater, Cub Swanson, Jeremy Stevens. So to be fighting Jay Herbert to be fighting him in his second UFC bout is quite phenomenal, and I'm hoping he gets a win tonight and gets his first UFC win. The UK guys and the Cage Warriors guys as a whole have been fed to their fights. Look at Leroy Murphy, although he didn't fight in Cage Warriors, been given absolute animals for his first couple of fights. Mason Jones has been given animals in his first couple of fights. Jay Herbert's not been given any easy opponents either. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when he gets to win. He's opening up the main card, of course. And he got Kennedy and Duke, of course, fantastic light heavyweight. 8-1 coming up, of course, against Danilo Marquez. You got Michelle Prazeres versus Shavkat Rakimov. 13-0 if Shavkat looking to extend that undefeated record. You got Wadi Alves versus Jeremiah Wells. Marcin Prachnio versus AK Hoover. Julia Vida versus Julia Stinkov. Charles Rosa versus Justin James. And I believe Yancy Medeiros just thought Damir Hazovic don't have the result of that at hand, but again, a fantastic fight to kick off the performances, of course, and it was a unanimous decision win to Hadzovic coming from Tapology. So yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys, so we can enjoy the fights as a whole. Cage Warriors, the trilogy, absolutely phenomenal. We've recapped the whole three fight card from the weekend on Monday, of course, with tonight, and obviously we saw PFL, Kayla Harrison having another dominant victory, and of course we had Bellator 261, which saw its first ever interim heavyweight champion next to be fighting, of course, Ryan Bader, who's currently in that light heavyweight Grand Prix, of course. Yes, make sure to drop CageChat MMA subscribe on YouTube and follow on social media at CageChat MMA on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys on the next video.